Now, let's start sewing up all parts. The methods for sewing the heads, bodies, arms and legs of the axolotl kittens are the same. Next, we'll use the yellow kitten as a demonstration. Take out the head and body. Sew the body between rounds 12 to 13 of the head. First, find rounds 12 to 13. Count from the top of the head. 1, 13. This spot is between these two rounds. Insert the needle from the back of the head. Align the body and sew along the edges. Then sew up round 12 of the head and round 11 of the body together at the back of the head, occupying 4 stitches. Here is round 12. The last round is round 11 of the body. We need to sew these two rounds together. You can sew again to prevent the yarn from coming loose. Weave the excess yarn tail inside the body several times. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Adjust the fabric. The head and body are now fully sewn together. Now, sew the arms. Sew the arms to rounds 9 to 10 on both sides of the body with an 8-stitch gap between them. First, locate rounds 9 to 10. These are the two rounds. First, find the middle position. Count 4 stitches to the right. That is this position. We can mark it with a stitch marker. Locate the sewing spot for the other arm. Check to make sure the positions are symmetrical. Once symmetry is confirmed, start sewing. One arm is sewn on. Pull the needle out from the back of the body. Tighten the yarn. Sew the other arm the same way. Both arms are sewn on. Pull the needle out from the same spot at the back. Tighten the yarn. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch and tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. Now both arms are sewn on. Next, sew the legs. Sew the legs to the body between rounds 4 and 6, spacing 2 legs for stitches apart. First, find rounds for 2/6 of the body. At the position of these 3 rounds, take out the stitch marker and mark it. Do the same on the other side. Sew the edge of the legs along the edge of the arms. First, place the leg in the correct position. Start sewing along the outline. After sewing all around, pull the extra yarn tail out from the back of the body. Sew the other leg the same way. Both legs are sewn on. Pull the needle out from the back at the same spot. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch and tuck the yarn end into the fabric. Now 2 legs are sewn on. Everyone should sew these parts of the axolotl the same way. This is how the axolotl looks after sewing up the head, body, arms and legs. The sewing methods for the gills, tail fins and blushes are all the same. Next, let's use the pink one for demonstration. Now, let's start sewing the gills. Sew the gills between rounds for 256 to 7 and 8 to 9 of the head. About 5 stitches away from the eyes. First, find rounds for 2-5. These are the 2 rounds. About 5 stitches away from the eye. This is the exact spot. Start sewing. Pull the yarn out from the back. Thread the yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Insert the needle at the middle position. Pull the yarn out from the same spot. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Gently pinch to hide the yarn end inside the fabric. Make some adjustments. Sew the next gill between rounds 6 and 7. Sew it the same way. Tie a knot with the extra yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Gently pinch to hide the yarn end inside the fabric. The second gill is now sewn on. Sew the third gill between rounds 8 and 9. Start sewing from here. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the excess yarn tails. Pinch the fabric to tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. Sew the gills on the other side the same way. All gills are sewn on. Now start sewing the tail. Take out the pipe cleaner. Cut 1/3 of the pipe cleaner. Fold it in half and insert it into the tail. Sew the tail onto the middle of the back of the body between rounds 4 and 5. Find rounds 4 and 5. That is, these 2 rounds. First, insert the pipe cleaner from the middle position. Then insert the pipe cleaner. Start sewing the tail along the outline. After the sewing is finished, weave the excess yarn inside the fabric several times to hide it. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Here, you can use the pipe cleaner to shape the tail. The tail is now sewn on. Now start sewing the tail fins. Sew the large tail fin onto the first round of the tail. Find the first round of the tail. First, confirm the position. Start sewing. Pull the extra yarn tail out from the front of the fabric. Tighten the yarn. Thread the yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Insert from the middle position. Pull out from any position. Pinch and adjust the shape of the tail. Cut off the extra yarn tail. The large tail fin is now sewn on. Now sew the small tail fins. The small tail fins needs to be sewn onto rounds 2 to 3 and 4 to 5 of the tail. First, bind rounds 2 and 3. Start sewing. Pull out from any position on the fabric. Thread the yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Insert from the middle position. Pull out from any position on the fabric. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Adjust the tail and the small tail fin. Sew this tail fin onto rounds 4 to 5 of the tail. Find rounds 4 to 5. Pull the extra yarn tail out from any position on the fabric. Thread the yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Insert from the middle position. Pull out from any position on the fabric. Tighten the yarn. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Sew the small tail fin on the other side the same way. The tail fins are sewn on. Now, let's embroider blushes. Take an 8-inch dark pink yarn. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Insert your needle from the back. Embroider the blush between rounds 8 and 9 of the head. The eyes are on rounds 7 to 8. We need to embroider the blushes just below the eyes. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Cross one stitch to embroider the blush. Embroider twice. Repeat the same steps on the other side. Pull the needle out from the same spot at the back. Use your needle to adjust the blushes. Tie a knot with the yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Now the blushes are finished. Let's start embroidering the mouth. Take 8 inches of black yarn. 1 black yarn consists of 4 thinner strands. Pull out one of the strands. Thread the yarn onto a shorter sewing needle. Embroider the mouth on the 8th round of the head, between two eyes. Insert the needle from the top. Leave a length of yarn tail at the top. Embroider the mouth in this way. Adjust it slightly. Tie a knot with the 2 yarn tails at the top. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch the fabric to tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. A pink axolotl's mouth is completed. Let's embroider the blue axolotl's mouth. Thread one black strand onto the shorter sewing needle. Insert the needle at the top of the head. Pull it out at the 8th round. Leave a length of yarn tail at the top. Embroider the mouth in this way. Make some adjustments with the needle. Tie a knot with the yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch the fabric to tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. The mouth of the blue axolotl is done. Now sew the heart. To the 4th round of the heart between rounds 2 and 3 of the arm. The heart is between the 2 arms. Check the round numbers. Locate between rounds 2 and 3 of the arm. Insert needle through the lower part of round 4 of the heart. Do the same on the other side. Pass the excess yarn into the body. Weave the excess yarn inside the body several times to hide it. Cut off the extra yarn tail. The pink axolotl is now completed. Now let's sew the milk teacup. Take a small amount of cotton. Stuff the cotton into the milk teacup. Tie a knot with the yarn tail end the milk teacup lid's yarn tail. You do not need to tie them too tightly. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Take out a longer sewing needle. Thread the yarn tail onto it. Sew round 2 of the inside of the milk teacup lid to round 7 of the milk teacup. First, find round 2 of the inside of the milk teacup lid. We can seam any horizontal lines on the inside of the fabric. This is round 1. This is round 2. We pass the needle through here. Find round 7 on the milk teacup, sew along the edge. After finishing sewing, weave the excess yarn inside the fabric several times. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Adjust the milk teacup lid. Take 8 inches of brown yarn. Thread the yarn through the longer sewing needle. Insert the needle from the bottom. Pull the needle out from any position. Start embroidering the pearls. Leave a length of yarn tail below. Hold the yarn with your left hand. The tip of the sewing needle should point toward the left hand. Wrap the yarn around the sewing needle 3 times. Insert the needle just beside the exit point. Pull the needle through another position. 1 pearl is done. You can embroider the other pearls the same way. The pearls are completed. Pull the yarn out from the same spot. Tie a knot with the 2 yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Tuck the yarn end into the fabric. You can use the sewing needle to help. Sew the milk teacup onto the blue axle at its arms. Take an 8-inch of light brown yarn. We need to sew round 4 of the milk teacup between rounds 2 and 3 of the axle at its arms. Insert the needle from the back of the body. Then pull it out from the front. Insert the needle at round 4 on the back of the milk teacup. Pull the yarn out from the side of the milk teacup. Bind the spot between rounds 2 and 3 of the arm. Do the same on the other side. Tie a knot with the 2 yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Adjust the shape a little. Next, make the straw. Take out the thin pipe cleaner and scissors. Use the scissors to trim the pipe cleaner's fuzz. Cut a 1-inch pipe cleaner. Insert the pipe cleaner into the center of the milk teacup lid. Leave an appropriate length. Make some adjustments. The blue axolotl is completed now. Let's start sewing all parts of the kitten, except for the items they hold in their arms. The sewing methods are the same for all kittens. Next, we'll use this yellow cat as a demo. Take out the ears and sew them onto rounds 2 to 5 of the head. Be sure to keep them symmetrical on left and right. First, bind rounds 2 to 5 on the head. Use a stitch marker to mark the position. Repeat the same method on the other side. Check that the left and right sides are symmetrical. Make any needed adjustments. Once you've confirmed symmetry, start sewing. Pull the extra yarn tail out from the back. One ear is sewed on. Please sew the other ear the same way. The other ear is sewn on. Pull the yarn tail out from the same stitch. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. The ears are sewn on. Now, let's sew the inner ears. Sew the inner ear onto rounds to 2/4 of the ear. Pull the extra yarn out from the back. Thread this yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Pull the yarn out through the same stitch. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. One inner ear is sewn on. Please sew the other inner ear the same way. The inner ears are sewn on. Now let's sew the tail. Fold a 1/2-inch pipe cleaner in half and insert it inside the tail. Sew the tail onto the middle back of the body at rounds 4 to 5. First, find rounds 4 to 5. Find the center position on the back. Insert the pipe cleaner at this spot. Start sewing the tail. Sew the tail onto rounds 4 to 5. Sew along the outline. Weave the excess yarn tail several times inside the fabric to hide it. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Adjust the shape of the tail. We can use the pipe cleaner to shape the tail. The tail is now sewn on. Next, let's embroider the patterns on the kitten's head. Take 10 inches of yarn in the matching color. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Embroider patterns on rounds 1 through 4 of the head. Insert the needle at the side position. Pull it through at round 4. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Pull the yarn tail out through the same spot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch and tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. The patterns are completed. Now let's start embroidering the nose, mouth and whiskers. Take 8 inches of pink yarn. Separate 2 strands from the yarn. Thread the yarn onto a shorter sewing needle. Insert needle from the back. We need to embroider the nose on round 8. Pull the yarn through at round 8. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Start embroidering the nose. Stitch a triangle shape. Fill in the triangle completely. After finishing the nose embroidery, pull the needle out from the back at the same spot. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut the excess yarn tails. Hide the yarn end inside the fabric. The nose is now completed. Next, embroider the mouth and whiskers. Take 8 inches of black yarn. Cut the yarn. Pull out 1 strand. Thread the strand onto a shorter sewing needle. Embroider the mouth and whiskers on rounds 8 to 9. Let's start by embroidering the mouth. Insert the needle from the back and pull it out at the front. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Pull the needle out at the same spot from the back. Adjust the shape of the mouth. The mouth is now embroidered. Tie a knot with the 2 yarn tails. Cut the excess yarn tails. Hide the yarn end inside the fabric. Pull out another strand of black yarn. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Embroider the whiskers on rounds 8 and 9. Insert the needle from the back. Bring the needle out at round 8 from the front. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Bring the needle out at the same stitch on the back. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. The kitten's mouth, whiskers and nose are embroidered. Now, let's start sewing the mouse. Sew the mouse ears onto the body between rounds 4 and 5, leaving it a stitch gap in the middle. Find rounds 4 and 5. Between these 2 rounds, start sewing. Bring the needle out from the other side of the body. Thread the yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Bring the needle out at the same spot. Tie a knot with the 2 yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Pinch to tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. One ear is sewn on. Please sew the other ear the same way. Both ears are sewn on. Next, sew on the tail. Sew the tail to round 9 on the back of the body. Insert the needle from the middle. Pull out from the front. Handle the other yarn the same way. Tie a knot. Cut off the extra yarn tails. Hide the yarn end inside the fabric. Take an 8-inch black yarn. Separate 2 strands from the yarn. Thread the yarn onto a shorter sewing needle. Embroider the French knot stitches as the eyes. Insert your needle from the back. Embroider the eyes on rounds 3 to 4. Leave a yarn tail at the back. Do the same on this side. Pull the needle out from the same spot at the back. Make some adjustments. Tie a knot with the extra yarn tails. Cut off excess yarn tails. Hide the yarn end inside the fabric. A mouse is now completed. Now sew the mouse onto the kitten's arms. Take an 8-inch blue yarn. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Place the mouse in the correct spot between the arms. Insert the needle from the back. Leave a length of yarn tail at the back. Thread the yarn into the mouse's body. Check the position again before sewing. Tighten the yarn. Adjust the mouse's position slightly. Cut off the extra yarn tail. Pinch and shape it as needed. Now let's make the ball for the gray kitten. Take out the pink yarn. Wrap it around your middle and index fingers. Remove the yarn from your fingers. Wrap the yarn around the center of the loop. Fold the yarn in half and then keep wrapping. Shape the yarn into a ball. Keep wrapping the same way. Leave a 4-inch yarn tail and cut the yarn. Take out a longer sewing needle. Thread the yarn onto the needle. Insert the needle from the middle. Pull out from the opposite side. The yarn ball is completed. Cut an 8-inch piece of pink yarn. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Insert needle from the back. Pull out from the middle. Pull out from the side of the yarn ball. Sew the yarn ball between rounds to end 3 of the arms. Tie a knot using the 2 yarn tails. Cut off the extra yarn tails. You can trim the yarn tail shorter here. The gray kitten is completed.